this afternoon, I will be sharing about offensive cybersecurity. So it's like what I usually do sa everyday work ko. It's basically the dynamics of the profession, and then some trends here in Singapore and even back in the Philippines and internationally, pati opportunities for students and even professionals already working in the industry. So, uh, just to introduce myself, my name is Natu. I actually graduated from the University of St. LaSalle sa Bacolod, batch 2015. And I currently work as a consultant for security, specifically for penetration testing. No, and the industry is quite diverse, like for banking and finance, mga applications that are being used sa data centers, telecoms, insurance companies, and so on. So I'm basically testing applications and networks on a diverse industry. So I worked as a vulnerability researcher from the first registered computer emergency response team sa Philippines, which is CSP Cert. And I have some certifications in cybersecurity, namely sa offensive security, the certified professional, certified expert, and web expert. Two from Microsoft, and then another two from Crest. Crest is actually required here sa Singapore to do penetration testing. And I was also listed in some of the security hall of fames of companies like Asus, Nokia, and some other more after finding security issues sa systems nila. No? I also have some zero-day findings, which you can read more if you search for these IDs. Okay, so this afternoon, the structure of my presentation will be simple lang. This will be basically I'll introduce cybersecurity in general, no, and then how current professionals in the industry are part of the cybersecurity circle, and then let's dive into specific parts of cybersecurity, specifically sa offensive, no? Kasi my line of work here in Singapore is actually for offensive, sa offensive operations. And then right after the discussions under offensive security, I'll be going into the trends and potential opportunities for students and even professionals already working in the industry. Oops. So, where do you basically belong? If you're currently a professional working in the industry, there you would realize that you're actually still part of the cybersecurity circle, no? Pero this all starts off with the white team, or what we call the management, no? So in one company, if you're working in a company or a business or even an organization, my white team, which is basically responsible for the management ng policies, governance, standards that are being implemented sa company na yan. So this is basically the role of the white team, no. So just to give you an example, if for example, if a fresh graduate joins the company, so if that fresh graduate, for example, starts working sa company, there will be a process that has to be followed para makastart siya to work. Like, for example, the new employee has to be onboarded para magkaroon siya ng account, para magkaroon siya ng emails. So, uh, these steps or these protocols are being made by management, diba? So, this is basically under the white team. And then the next one is the yellow team. So these are the builders naman. So for yellow team, this is basically uh, builders such as software developers, network engineers that are designing or even maintaining the network. No? So builders are basically the ones who build under specific technologies. So if, for example, you're a software developer or software engineer, software architect, or any other that is maintaining or creating, developing technology, you're basically part of the builders or the yellow team. Okay. And then the next one is the blue team. So the blue team in this case is the role of the blue team in this case is for defensive operations or the defensive security, no. So yung role naman ni defensive security sa isang organization is they do the monitoring, they do the detection, and they also do the response if ever threat actors try to get into assets of the company. So they actually do investigations then. So it's more of trying to check if there are threat actors being trying to get inside sa company or try to steal maybe information. They try to prevent this. No. And the last main one is, of course, the red team, which is under offensive cybersecurity naman. The role of red team naman is they try to find vulnerabilities and try to hack into company assets. So it's more of a proactive approach para malaman if the application or the asset has vulnerabilities before we basically roll it out into live use or production. Okay, but uh, combining the teams, we also have the green team, which basically comprises of a mix from people under defensive security and the builders from the yellow team. No, so if you guys attended Engineer Kenneth's webinar last month, it's more of RPA, diba? That was about automation. Automation, I would say that this is still part of builders. Pero if you mix automation with defensive security, you can basically enhance the monitoring, the threat detection, and it can basically help with investigations too. So green team basically comprises of a mix from people galing sa builders and people from defensive security. It enhances the automation sa process ng isang company. Okay? And then a mix of the builders and people from offensive security naman. This brings education in the sense that people from offensive security will try to hack into applications, diba? Or even networks. They will try to find flaws para makita ng builders on how their application or how their asset is misconfigured or how their assets have the security issues, no. At the same time, if malalaman ng builders how the red team will be able to exploit their assets, they will be able to fix it. And they basically exchange information with the red team para ma-educate yung both sides. And of course, there's also a mix of defensive security and offensive security, no? And this is basically the purple team. This is actually quite rare na makakita ka ng person who has experience with defensive security and offensive security. And this is really in demand because in purple teams, there is an integration of tactics na. What I mean about integration of tactics, if you have a mix knowledge of defensive and offensive security, and as of now, for example, you're trying to concentrate sa defensive security, you will be able and basically my idea ka about offensive security, diba? Pero you're trying to concentrate on the defensive side for now. You basically have the advanced idea of how the red team works. So you will be able to implement effective ways how to defend your organization. And at the same time, if you're part of the red team, pero you also have experience with blue team, you can basically try to circumvent or try bypassing the security mechanisms or the defenses in place. So it's basically integration ng mga methods or tactics that are used in both sides. Okay? So in this case, if you're a programmer, if you're a software developer, you're basically part of the builders. If even if you're a network engineer, mga system administrators, cloud engineers, and so on, are basically part of builders. If you're doing more of policies management, then you're part of the white team. If your line of work is similar to mine, then it's red team, and so on. Okay, but for this afternoon, I will be concentrating more on offensive security, specifically one portion of offensive security, because this is my line of work here in Singapore, and this is my experience. So, under offensive cybersecurity, there are actually quite a lot of branches, no? And just to give you an example, we have physical security testing. And if you see the image, I got this image from a conference that I attended maybe about 2 years ago sa Philippines. So, Philippines actually has hacking conferences, no? And they have a booth sa isang side ng conference where they have these tools such as mga locks, mga doorknobs, mga padlocks, and so on. And they actually teach you how to bypass the lock through lock picking. Pero just to give you a warning, no, um, this is completely fine as long as you don't lockpick any property that's not yours. Okay? Sa Philippines, you can basically buy lockpicking tools, pero please don't use it in properties that you don't own. Here in Singapore, you won't be able to buy this easily because they require a license for you to own lockpicking tools. No? So this is actually being taught sa conferences, mga hacking conferences in the Philippines. And then another branch of offensive cybersecurity is application security testing. Now, for application security testing, this is more of what I do every day here in Singapore. Like, for example, for banking clients, before they roll out an application na ipapagamit nila sa customers, I basically have to test their application and see if the application can be hacked. Kung pwede siyang ma-hack, the application team from the bank has to fix the issues before it goes into production. Okay? And then another branch is network security testing. And there's actually a whole lot more. Network security testing will involve testing for network assets, host, mga router, checking if they can be hacked, and so on. And then there's infrastructure testing, then there's cloud security testing, and there's so many more. Okay. But if we generalize each of the testing, we can say that this can be done as penetration testing or what we call pen testing. Okay. So if it's physical security testing, for example, it's pen testing for physical security. And then if it's application security testing, it's pen testing for applications, or let's say pen testing for web applications, mobile applications, and so on. And then if we try to combine everything in one process, that will become adversary simulations or adversarial simulations. So sometimes companies will come to security companies, hey, we need to see if our company is prepared for cyber attacks. So it's recommended na yung gagawin is adversary simulations. So adversary simulations will typically include the consultant going to the company without the security knowing na pupunta yung consultant doon, and then the consultant will try to do social engineering, mag-chit chat sa security and see if he can get inside the building without any authorization. And then once the person, for example, gets into the building, he will insert a rogue computer sa network, like maybe yung Raspberry Pi nyo, or even a laptop that's not part of the company's network, no? And then from there on, check assets and so on. So combining everything, it's adversary simulations. If it's very specific, like network security testing, application security testing, and physical security testing, it's penetration testing in a general sense. And this afternoon, I'll share more about penetration testing, because adversary simulations, it's a bit rare even here in Singapore. It's mostly done sa US and European countries, no? So, this is the general life cycle of penetration testing. This basically starts off with pre-engagement requirements. This is more of trying to speak with the client, try to get information on what will be part of the testing, kung web application ba siya, mobile application ba siya, and so on. And then I'll be speaking, I'll be sharing more information about this in the next few slides. But just to give you a brief overview, no, right after getting the requirements and you start hacking, you basically need to do recon, or information gathering, no. So for information gathering, it's like looking for information such as what kind of technology is the application using, or what kind of operating is the system running on sa isang host machine, and so on. Right after identifying the issue, it's trying to identify vulnerabilities na through vulnerability identification. This is more of a research na on the external level. So, recon is a research inside the asset. Vulnerability identification is research about what you found from information gathering or recon. And then once you identify the vulnerability, there comes exploitation, or the actual hacking na mangyayari. And right after exploiting the asset, of course, we have to do reporting and see how we can fix the issue. So the last part is actually quite important, even though that I know during college kasi reporting is the most boring part, no? Pero this is actually one of the most important parts that we shouldn't just leave out. So documentations, okay? So again, for pre-engagement requirements, this is more of understanding the scope of the work. Um, so some basic questions will be, ano yung asset? Ano yung iti-test natin? Will it be a web application that we will be doing a security test against? Is it maybe a host-based assessment, or maybe mobile app ba siya? Is it a website that's internal to the company, or is it going to be released sa public, and so on? And then another basic question that we have to ask sa pre-engagement is, of course, the environment. There will be two kinds sa environment. The first one, is it on-premise or remote? So this is the physical location, no? So if the application is maybe internal sa company, then it's highly likely that the testing will happen on premise sa company din mismo. So the consultant in this case will go to the company and then do the testing sa client side. But there will be cases that if the company will also open their application or their asset for internet access, then the testing can be done remotely. And another environment is the testing environment naman. So uh, if we're going to test an asset, if we're going to check for security issues sa isang asset, we have to ask if is this asset going to be on a dedicated environment for testing, or is it going to be tested using a production environment. Now this is quite important for the reason that if you're going to test on a dedicated environment or a test environment, you can basically do anything you want. So you can exploit because it's more or less controlled, diba? So if you mess up some data, okay lang since test environment lang naman siya. But you cannot do that in production because in production, the data of clients are already there. So if you do penetration testing for production environments na mga applications or assets, you really have to be careful kasi if you mess up some data, the integrity of the data will be affected, no? And customers of that company will have issues because of your testing. So it's really recommended to do the testing on an environment dedicated to the security testing. But in some cases, such as network security testing, you will really encounter that you have to test in production because, like for example, if it's a 100 IP network, how can you test that uh, in a virtual setup unless na you have a lot of time to simulate all of the machines, no? So you basically need to do it in production. And of course, because of this, we have rules of engagement. So the rules of engagement on this side will basically depend on certain factors. So the example that I gave you, if the environment is basically dedicated for security testing, then rules of engagement, you can exploit the issue, you can modify any data you want, and so on. But if it's in production, the rules of engagement here will more or less change because you can only change data for test accounts that are that are part of the production environment. Pero you shouldn't change customer details because that will mess up the integrity of the data of customers. No? So these are just a few items under pre-engagement requirements. No, and there are actually a checklist, my checklist though, but this is the very common ones being discussed during the pre-engagement requirements. So the next one is recon, or it's short for reconnaissance, which is another word for information gathering. Now, in information gathering, once you get the scope of work from clients, you have to check. So, for example, if it's a web application, check what kind of technology is the web application using? What kind of framework is it using? Is it maybe using PHP? Is it using ASP.NET, C Sharp, uh, jQuery for the front end? It's using Python Django, and so on. You have to identify ano yung technology na nag-run sa application na yan for you to later on identify what kind of vulnerabilities will be existing or what vulnerabilities are possible sa application na yan. Okay, because there are certain vulnerabilities that may exist on one specific technology but will not exist on another technology. Okay, and right after learning about the framework or the programming language that's being used by the web application, um, check is the web application using plugins or components. So, for example, if you've used WordPress, it has it has so much plugins that you also have to check kung ano yung mga ginagamit na plugins ng WordPress application na yan. And of course, components such as, again, jQuery, mga Bootstrap, and so on. Okay? For host machine naman, just to give you an example, no? So earlier it's a web application. What if you will be testing a host machine? You basically need to gather the information by checking kung ano ba yung operating system na tumatakbo sa machine na yan. Is it running Linux? Is it running Windows? The reason why you have to know these things is because you have to check, since the syntax for Linux is completely different sa syntax ni Windows. So command line actions is quite different for both operating systems. So exploiting Windows, running exploits on Windows will actually not work on Linux for uh, reasons na they have a different structure. Okay. So right after you know about the operating system, have to know what services are running naman. So if you're testing your machine, for example, if you're testing your computer and you found out that it's running Windows, for example, and nag-port scan ka sa Windows machine na yan, and you found that port 80 is open, for example. So port 80 is for a web server, HTTP, and if you also found that it's serving port 443, so 443 HTTPS, and then let's say uh, port 53 DNS. So basically, for services running, you have to scan the machine and check what kind of ports are accessible, no, sa machine, because that will basically give you an idea what the role of the host machine is for. So for example, if port 53 is open sa isang machine, then port 53 by default is DNS port, diba? DNS server. So you basically assume that that machine is running as the DNS server sa network. Okay? So in this case, just try to gather as much information as you can in the recon stage, and then list it down, kasi you will have to go back to these information later on in the engagement. And right after this one, the next step is actually vulnerability identification. No? So just for example, if you were able to find that your application that you're testing, or the asset that you're testing, is a website, and it so happened that the website is, for example, Witty CMS. Now it's using a Witty CMS as the core. So Witty CMS is actually a content management application where you can create custom websites. Okay, so you found out that you're basically testing a custom web application that's running on Witty CMS. The first thing that you could do is try to identify vulnerabilities. So this is mainly part of gathering information, no? That you knew na the one that you're testing is Witty CMS. So it's very simple as doing a Google search to identify potential vulnerabilities. So just type in the technology and then vulnerabilities, and you'll see on the first two results, my listed public vulnerabilities na. This is the very basic way of identifying vulnerabilities. Pero the complex ways of identifying vulnerabilities will be through rigorous testing, no? Pero this is the very basic one, Google search. Google is a really powerful tool for security research, no? Because everything is in Google. So notice sa second result, with the CMS list of security vulnerabilities, and it shows cross-site scripting and SQL injection. Just to give you another example, if you're testing another application, uh, and for example, when you visited the host machine's address, it forwarded you to index.php, and you'll notice that this is charting, no? Mga for chart, barcode, bar chart, and so on. And you notice sa address, it has pchart 213. So again, doing a Google search for this one. Now, instead of vulnerability here, you can basically type in vulnerability or exploit, no? And you'll notice the results, mga exploit siya. So, clicking on the first result, you will reach to exploit database. And it says that there's a directory traversal vulnerability on this web application. So, a directory traversal vulnerability is something like you can add in file paths sa URL, and then it will basically traverse to that file path, and the contents of the file will be returned to you. So when it comes to exploitation, if you try out that vulnerability and you enter the file path etc passwd, you will be able to pull out information such as users being used in the web server. So based from this example, obviously this is Linux, no? Free BSD because of this etc passwd. And with this knowledge, you can see na my user named root and tour because of this my access sila dito because of the super user and root. So this is where the actual hacking comes in, no, sa exploitation portion. And right after, exploiting it, you basically have to do reporting, no. And in reporting, you really need to describe the issue in general and then going to specific details. Right after describing the issue, you also need to replicate and demonstrate exploitation. So the best way to do this is write it in steps. Like step one, log in to this application. Step two, type in this path to this URL, and so on. So has to have clear steps to replicate the issue, no? And of course, in penetration testing, we really need to present the impact. So just to give you an example, no, if you are doing some web applications and database retrieval for data, and your application has an SQL injection or SQL injection, the impact on that case in general is being able to grab information from the database, potentially modify data from the database that are unauthorized, no, or even delete data from the database na hindi authorized because it's an injection, di ba? But there are cases that even though there is SQL injection, you can only pull out certain information, but you can't modify or delete data. So from a very high security risk because of the impact, it will get lowered down depende kung ano yung pwede mong magawa. sa vulnerability na yan. Okay? And of course, apart from presenting the impact, there should be recommendations on how the team can fix the issues. So you basically have to have the knowledge. If you can do the exploitation, you also need to find out how will the application team or the developers will be able to fix it. So if you're also testing networks and you found out that it's still using WEP for the Wi-Fi, then that's a security issue because WEP is already outdated and it has a lot of security issues. No, so what will be the recommendation? Recommendation will be using the next protocol na, di ba? Like WPA2 and so on. Okay? So, that's basically for the general life cycle for penetration testing, no? Now for common vulnerabilities sa software applications. Now, I'm actually sharing more about software applications, no, because we don't really get a lot of network testing. Pero for software applications, we actually have it every day. Like for this week, for example, I'm assigned to telecoms, and then next week sa banking na naman, and then the other week after insurance companies. So it's really diverse for software applications. In 1 month, siguro I can test maybe 4 to 6 applications for penetration testing. No? Different ones. So, common vulnerabilities. For web applications, the very common one is, of course, injection. You'd actually be surprised that even banks all around the world still has SQL injection. This is because the technology is there to fix it, pero developers sometimes miss out using the properly formatted or the properly secured code, but instead they use the vulnerable code because usually the vulnerable code is easier to understand compared to the one that has security. So sometimes developers usually miss out, and we usually get injections. Okay. Another common example for a common vulnerability for web application is sensitive data exposure. So what do I mean about this? Sometimes if we do pen testing for web applications, um, may mga developers minsan they sometimes forget that they modify the code, no, and then they back up the file, so they rename the file into, for example, .php.bak, that dot back. So it won't get rendered na by the web server engine because it doesn't have the php extension. So the source code will get exposed. Will be able to read the source code na, and usually source codes, if it's maybe connecting to the database, andun yung database credentials, andun yung mga sensitive information like configuration or API keys, and we can basically use that to grab a foothold of how we can do or how we can proceed to access other sensitive information. Okay, so this is another common issue, no? Another one is broken authentication and broken authorization. Now, a lot of people are actually quite confused, no, kung ano ba yung difference ng authentication and authorization. This is one of the most common confusion when it comes to security. Then, so authentication is basically I can maybe describe it as some kind of a gate from public access going to the asset. So, for example, if you log into Facebook, that's basically authentication. Okay. Authorization, on the other hand, is more of the privileges. So, for example, if you're in Facebook, you won't be able to read messages of other people because you are not authorized to do it. So it's more of privilege. Pero like for example, if you're developing maybe an application like some kind of a teacher and student portal where the teacher can post grades. So if it's authentication, the student and teacher has to log in para makita yung system. And the public shouldn't be able to just see the contents of the system, diba? So that's authentication. Authorization, it's the teacher being able to see all of the grades of students, pero the student won't be able to see the grades of other students because the student is not authorized to see the other grades of a student. So that's mainly the difference now. See, authorization is for privileges. Authentication is for um, getting into the application or the asset. Okay. And of course, we also have using components with vulnerabilities. No, so uh, if you're developing a website, for example, and if you use jQuery version 1, it actually has a lot of vulnerabilities. You can do a quick Google search with this one. So every time you use an external component, try to check sa Google the component name, vulnerabilities, and you will see a list of vulnerabilities. And then it actually has recommendations then on what version you should you use para hindi siya vulnerable and so on. Okay? So, for mobile applications naman, eto, insecure storage of sensitive data. When I was doing vulnerability research for the computer emergency response dyan sa Philippines, one of my assignments was try to research for security issues on applications that are used by the general Filipino public. So what I did was try downloading a lot of general mobile applications that are uh, developed by or are being used by Filipinos. No, so after downloading some of them, I reverse engineered them, and I found that some of the applications are actually hard coding credentials. So just to communicate to the web server, they're using credentials para ma-access yung data from the server, which is actually a bad idea because you're hard coding credentials, attackers will be able to grab that and then use that to their advantage. Okay, so the correct way of doing it is not hard coding sensitive data, but you can just maybe use API tokens, pero there should be an exchange, no? Like the user has to enter a secret, and then the server has to verify this secret if it's correct or not, just for identification purposes. So there has to be the authentication and authorization implemented. Okay. And of course, for mobile applications, the runtime application self protection, or we call it as Rasp. This is where uh, items like these come into place. So, if just to give you an example, no, for example, a you have a banking application, even dyan sa Philippines. If you download a banking application in your mobile device, you can basically use it. Pero if your phone is jailbroken or rooted, sometimes banking applications will try to show you a message that, oh, your mobile device is rooted. You cannot use this application. So there are actually bypasses to this one. Like you can still use um, your banking application even in rooted or jailbroken devices, but the risk is higher, no, because rooted device can basically run any program and then access data by data for other applications. So that's mainly the reason why banking applications won't really allow you to use the app in an unsecure device. So Rasp in this case is a check if the mobile application is implementing these kinds of security properly. So, for example, sa jailbreak and root detection, if the phone is jailbroken, can we maybe bypass it and then still use it, and so on? Okay. SSL certificate pinning, this is more of intercepting the traffic, no? If it has properly implemented the SSL certificate pinning, you won't be able to intercept the traffic ng mobile application. And binary tampering is more of what if the attacker modified the APK file or IPA file for iOS. Will other users be able to use the application or hindi? Okay. And for desktop applications, it's more of a privilege escalation. Like, for example, if your desktop application is running as a high privileged user and your current user context is a low privileged user, if the desktop application has a vulnerability, you will be able to get the privilege where that desktop application is running. So, pwede mong ma-escalate yung privilege mo from a low-level user going to a high-level user. There are a lot of examples sa internet about this. And again, insecure storage of sensitive data, no, similar to the mobile application. So, a few months back, I was trying to learn a keyboard, no, yung piano. So, I was able to find this um, application sa internet where you can just connect your keyboard to your laptop, and then the application will try to help you out with the notes. So it's basically some kind of a guide, no? And then you can play the keyboard. Pero before really going into it, I I wasn't really comfortable on doing registration and all. So I still had to register and found out that it's storing my credentials locally lang naman. It wasn't being transmitted in plain text naman. Pero I found out that it's actually storing my credentials locally in plain text, even my password in plain text. So in that case, if I got infected with a malware, the malware can basically just pull out the credentials from that storage, and then some other people can hack my account. And it's fairly common, especially in the Philippines. It's fairly common that kung ano yung password mo sa Facebook, ganun din yung password mo sa email. And I will actually try to discourage you from having the same password for all accounts, because just in case one account gets compromised, at least yung other accounts mo safe pa. Okay. And of course, for desktop applications, code execution. Now, I know that in computer engineering, during college, one of our topics was C and C++, no? I'm pretty sure that while you guys are maybe experienced developing mga C or C++ applications, you mainly used mga pointers. So sometimes if you're in Linux, you get segmentation faults if you sometimes miss the asterisks pointers. uh, Usually, if we're a student, we don't really mind it, no? Segmentation fault, may mali lang siguro sa code ko. Pero when it comes to security, that's really important, because a segmentation fault is
a problem that happens a memory, which may lead to a security issue, and that security issue may lead to code execution. So that's actually dangerous when it comes to security. So when it comes the idea here is more of doing buffer overflows, if you're familiar. Pero the impact is actually high risk kasi code execution yan. It's mainly playing around with assembly language code from C and C++. Okay? So, how do we fix this though? Sa mga common vulnerabilities. If later on you guys, for the students, no, later on if you guys will be working as network engineers or software developers or system administrators, you always have to be proactive. So what do I mean about this? Try to read about vulnerabilities. If you're going to implement a technology, or if you're going to use a technology, try to research about common vulnerabilities and exposures. No, this is CVE. So the one that I showed you guys earlier, so first few slides. So CVEs, they basically update every day, with new vulnerabilities around the world. So this is free. You can check the details from MITRE, and you can basically see the vulnerability details of software applications, firmware, and so on. So reading about CVEs will keep you updated on what are the security issues that are being found. No, another one, if you're a web developer naman, this is something that's very good. The Open Web Application Security Project. They actually have a checklist, no, even for developers. So checklist for security requirements, no, the basic ones that has to be implemented while developing software applications. And then we also have OWASP MSTG, or the Mobile Security Testing Guide. One of the founders of the current company that I'm working for here in Singapore actually was the author of MSTG. This is basically still under OWASP, or the Web Application Security Project. And MSTG is basically describing security best practices that you can do while developing mobile applications. And of course, your very best friend, no, Google. Just simply searching for the technology that you're using and then vulnerability in Google will show you a lot of information if that technology that you will be implementing or you will be using has security issues. Okay, so Google is really a powerful tool. No, now going into trends. So of course, most, if not all of us, are using mobile applications, no, or mobile devices. So the trend for mobile security is really high, to the point that some large companies are actually paying a ton of money just to find security issues in mobile security. So just to give you an example, this is a company called Zerodium. No, if ever you find a zero click issue sa Android, so this is the one in the uppermost right, Android FCP. I'm not sure if you guys can see it. I hope you can see it. Android FCP zero click. FCP is full chain with persistence. This basically means that zero click. No, if ever I find a vulnerability on an Android application where I just need to know the mobile number, for example, ng target ko, and I send the recipient an exploit, and then I was able to hack him without him doing anything. The exploit will be worth 2.5 million US dollars. So this company can pay you that much. And you would think na this is a bit grayish. Why would a company buy that kind of exploit? So Zerodium actually has partners, no, partnerships with large companies where they work with other companies to try and secure uh, their assets. So they're basically trying to bid for these security issues. So 2.5 million for Android zero click, for iOS up to around $2 million. So you'll actually see that the demand for these kinds of issue is actually quite high. So this is one trend, mobile security. Another one is automotive security. So when I was in college, one of my friends has the may talyer sila sa Bacolod, no? And he has a car that wasn't working anymore, and we basically tried playing around with it. And since hindi ako magaling sa soldering, since pasmado ako, I just concentrated more of my time sa programming. And then I used to ask my other classmates for help in soldering, no? Especially the components that are really, really small. So if it's project design or yung thesis, hindi ako yung nagsosolder. Ako lang yung sa programming, pero parang alanganin ako sa soldering. Now, when we went to one of my friends sa talyer nila, we were able to pull out a dashboard sa isang sasakyan na hindi na gumagana, and we were able to modify the mileage, no, through one of the ICs ng dashboard. So it was basically modifying the values through hex editor lang. It was fairly easy, but just need to look at the right spot, no. It has documentations naman all around the internet, pero that's basically just one of what you can do in automotive security. And this is one of the trends last year and even this year, or even the next few years, because cars are being uh, digitalized din. Like for example, Tesla, it has a computer inside it, and other high-end na mga sasakyan, even the basic ones has computers na, the dashboard, no, sa mga sasakyan. But the thing is, it's a bit expensive lang. Like after graduating 2015, like I tried finding components in the internet, and it's actually quite expensive. So again, this image that you're seeing sa screen is one booth from the same conference that I showed earlier sa physical security. Now this one is automotive naman, automotive security. Okay? So in this case, you can like modify the data sa sasakyan mo and so on. Okay? And other more trends. Of course, hindi to mawawala si machine learning and artificial intelligence, like combining machine learning and AI with cybersecurity, just to make the technology smart, no? Based from data, and then let the technology run in your companies to try and maximize the defense and so on. Blockchain, um, bitcoins. This is becoming. This is already actually a trend, but here in Singapore, there has been a spike of openings for security engineers that can work with blockchain. Okay, and of course, cloud. Since a lot of companies are migrating their local servers to the cloud, there's a spike for the need of security professionals that can work with the cloud, like AWS, Azure, and so on. And again, Internet of Things. After Internet of Things, automation. So it's basically something that computer engineers can definitely do, no? So machine learning and artificial intelligence, it's more of mathematics and data science, no? So math, yung computer engineering may math naman. Blockchain, cloud, automation, and other stuff. Uh, we basically have the capability to learn this, no? If you can finish engineering sciences nga nung college days or early college days, you'll definitely be able to cope up with this and partner it with security. You can definitely get into a very nice niche market, no? So for opportunities, if you ask me, is there really a demand for cybersecurity professionals? No, this is just from last year, from Forbes. No, as the end of 2020 approaches, the cybersecurity talent drought gets worse. And then for from CNBC, we are outnumbered. Cybersecurity professionals face a huge staffing shortage as attacks surge during the pandemic. And if you read the thing that I highlighted below, nearly 500,000 workers are needed in cybersecurity roles around the country. This is about 500,000 people that are needed for cybersecurity in the US alone. So this is just from September last year. So more or less mga 7, 8 months ago. Then South China Morning Post. The world faces a shortage of about 3 million cybersecurity professionals, and mostly it's in Asia Pacific. So the majority of the openings are actually here in Asia. Singapore, Malaysia, even the Philippines require a lot of cybersecurity professionals. No, a lot of my friends back in Manila, they usually ask me kung may kilala ba akong pwedeng mag-apply for this position under a cybersecurity engineer, under a penetration tester, and so on. So the job openings are basically there, pero aren't a lot of people that are um, available for that position. No, if you try to search cybersecurity alone and then filter it out for Singapore, you'll see that there's about 3,000 job posts. This is in Singapore alone, 3,000. So malware analyst, cybersecurity analyst, penetration tester, manager, and so on. So the job is there, pero the people that can do the job is wala pa. Okay? And again, under Forbes, ayun, number one, existing cybersecurity staff overworked. Hindi kaya yung 24/7 na mga incoming threats. Inexperienced professionals are being asked to deliver on very advanced security requirements. And then team and business are dependent on technology based solutions without the expertise to manage them properly. Now, the third one, I have to highlight the third one. No? This is actually real because I was able to speak with one of my friends here in Singapore that has mainly some blue team na role. So, nasa defensive security siya. No? And he actually can agree with number three because the technology that companies are actually buying are really good and really advanced. Pero the problem is the people that are being hired to handle them don't really have the proper training para maximize yung usage ng uh, technology, no? So if a company buys millions of dollars na technology, no, pero there's no one to uh, manage it, it's useless.
So basically need to have people that can do this, no? And for oh okay, so how do we basically fix this? For educators and students, I would say that we basically have to integrate cybersecurity in the curriculum. Pero this is usually easier said than done. I know that it's already a challenge for educators and students with the current curriculum lang just to cope up with new trends, no, in technology. But we really have to integrate security in what the students are learning. So, for example, if the professional course being taught is object-oriented programming, towards the end sana ng ano ng topic or ng subject ng course materials, maybe introduce a bit of security on how to properly implement security on that professional course. But yes, I understand that this is actually really going to be challenging in the school setup, no, or the university setup because of the topics involved. But another way would be, I guess, this one we're already doing this kasi computer engineering, it's so much of hands-on exercises like projects in microprocessors or um, electronics and so on. So it's usually hands-on, diba? So it's actually good that students are doing hands-on exercises, but uh, maximize hands-on exercises because this will really come in handy once the students will be um, transitioning from the university level going to the industry level na requirements. So for professionals naman, the current professionals that are already working, I would say that if you have a specialization on one specific field of technology, it will really be easy for you to shift into cybersecurity because uh, you already you already understand the technology, so you will be able to understand how to secure it, diba? So for example, if you're currently working as a software developer, it will be it's easier for you to transition into software security because you already know how to design computer softwares. Same with network engineers. It will be easier for you to transition into network security if you're already doing network engineering kasi you know how to design na. You basically know how to secure.
Oo, Singapore man na.
So it's basically having the specialization, and if you basically have the specialization, you'll easily get into security role with your specialization on hand. Okay, so yung point ko dito is how can you maybe secure a website if you don't know how a website works, diba? How can you secure your network if you don't have any idea how your network works? Okay, so it's more of focusing on what you really want to study and then transition over security for that specific specialization. And of course, this is the security certification progression chart, no, by Sign Cure Life from Reddit. Sa Reddit ko lang to na kuha. These are certifications. So you will see on the very bottom, it's for entry level, no? So Security Plus, SSCP under ISC squared, um, A plus certification, Network Plus, and so on. And then once you go into novice level, once you get the
the ideas, no, the fundamentals. You can go mga certified ethical hacker or yung mga server related certifications. And then right after this, you can basically again this is what I mean earlier. You basically need to know about the fundamentals before you can transition into a specialized security job. So above, the ones that you can see in blue is more of defensive na security, no? And then on the right portion, under security management, yung mga CISA, yung mga CISSP, this is more of white team governance. Okay? Yung akin is actually more of the offensive operations. So, ito OSCE, OSWE, and OSCP. The one in the right is for security engineering naman. It's more of cloud security, mga server security, and so on.
So I think this ends my presentation. I think this is the last slides. Any questions?
Wait, okay. Give me a moment now. Okay,
Yes po.
for those who have questions, you can actually ask the questions now. I will ask
Hmm.
everyone. But for those who really want to engage with cybersecurity, aminado din ako kay NATO kasi I'm also one of the one of the applying for industry kasi I'm also part builder and part defensive.
Mm.
But sometimes I do some usually nakakalimutan natin as a builder, we tend to forget those part ng bit of security about kailangan nating i-enhance, bakit nating naiwanan naka-open yung mga ports or bakit naiwanan natin yung mga restrictions. May mga chances na nangyayari yon when we do
Mm.
thing. And then you're doing at the same time cybersecurity. You know that to the students, right? This topic actually is a best for those who are interested and also for professionals who want actually to shift over. But you have to focus on certain levels. Yun nga lang, sabi ni Sir Nato, depende sa'yo kung saan mo lilinya. Kasi sa akin, industry certification din sa akin, pero mostly more on sa Windows side ako nagfo-focus. But it depende pa rin sa'yo kung saan ka talaga lilinya. Wait na, for students, let's give them the opportunity. I will allow them to. Okay. For those who have questions, pwede na kayong mag-ask ng questions nyo to the students. I will, mas maganda kasi malaman ninyo at first hand kasi
Yes po.
based on experience din. The experience will give you those ways once you reach that level. Tulad ni Sir Nato, consultant. The same thing, it will go to everyone. Once you graduate college, check which field you want to actually go to. It will go all the way hanggang makuha mo yung
Po,
book.
sir.
Okay, guys? Any questions po on the floor?
If ever nahihiya po sila, baka pwede rin nilang i-type in yung questions nila sa chat. Or if hindi pa nila na ano yung questions ngayon, pwede din nila akong i-email sa posted email ko just in case.
Okay. Ayan, meron na. Okay.
For slides.
For the slides, this one i-send namin sa inyo once makuha namin kay Sir on this. Okay, Sir Nato, how much po certification exam?
Okay. So,
This is actually a good question, no? Because one of the reasons why I was able to go here in Singapore is because of a certification that I did sa offensive security. That was mainly my ticket here in Singapore. That's why I landed a job here. So when it comes to certifications, mahal siya. I really have to be honest, no, na mahal siya. The cheapest one for entry level sa Philippines that I know of, yung certified ethical hacker, will cost you about 35,000 pesos. And this goes up to around 500 to 600,000 pesos isang certification. Especially for mga SANs, like the ones popular sa US. The one that I took, OSCP, the Offensive Security Certified Professional, specific siya for penetration testing. It was worth around 65,000 pesos last 2017. Um, I would suggest na if you won't be able to like set that much for budget, no, for security certifications, try to apply for scholarships. May certification bodies na bibigay ng scholarships, like just to give you an example, EC Council is giving a scholarship for students or even professionals. uh, they basically give out training materials, and then towards the end of the training, you get a chance to get certified through passing an exam. So if you're not really keen on spending so much for certifications, try to apply for scholarships. So more or less, it starts with 35,000 going up to around 600,000 pesos for certifications.
Okay. I will answer that part with Sir Nato on other certification bodies kasi depende kasi yung field mo. Like for example mine, because I'm doing what's this? A bit of IT management and at the same time with systems engineering. Naka-focus kasi ako sa Microsoft. Ang starting for MS, if you want to get certified on the server side, ang per exam, it will cost you around, ano yun? In the Philippines, it's around 80 USD, almost 5,000 pesos. But here in Singapore, that will cost you around 7,000 pesos. 7,000 pesos ang isang exam here in Singapore. Medyo mahal ng konti compare sa Pilipinas. And then if you're going on the systems engineer before the track was MCSE, you have to pass at least 3 exams and one yung very old one, the old track is you have to pass 3 exams and 2 elective na kailangan to be that you will be able to reach yung MCSE level. If you want to have the level of MCSA, you have to at least pass only 3 exams and then you get the certification. However, hindi lahat sineswerte dyan sa mga exams na yan kasi even though there are resources available online, but still those resources are not worth getting. You still have to base it on your experience. Kasi from there, malalaman mo yung mga workaround kung paano mo i-tackle yung bawat exam. Like Cisco, they have their own track and how you tackle one by one. In IT management, at least you have the fundamentals, the basics, understanding what is this, what is that. Yun naman yung kailangan talaga. And for the rest of the certification, depends on Depends talaga sa inyo kung saan nyo i-plan. It's either net server, security, software engineering. Depends on how you'll be able to tackle this. Okay? Parang yun. Okay, for students, wala pa kayong mga tanong. Parang ang tahimik natin dito lahat.
Tahimik sila, sir.
Serious yung topic, sir eh. Hmm. Medyo serious yung topic kasi more on security, offensive. Depende. Kasi depende kung defensive ka or
Defensive
offensive.
or offensive.
Kasi ito, medyo madugo to. Talagang, even though I try also yung ginawa ni Sir Nato, it's not easy. I'll be honest you, I have a friend, nag-try din yung offensive security, which is inabot siya ng nakailang unlock lang siya, at least 3 VMs before hindi niya natapos yung exam.
Alright, cool.
Sabi ni this exam of Sir Nato is not easy to take. Is hard. Kailangan marunong ka talaga.
Actually, sir, sa first take ko ng OSCP, na fail din ako. So, OSCP is basically 24 hours of exam. Hindi siya yung tipong multiple choice na exam. You really have to do hands-on practical na na exam, and that goes harder sa other offensive security exams, no. Pero another question from our from Sir John, from Sir Johnny, no. What would be the best certificate to take for beginners? Sir, do you mean under security po? Kasi for offensive security, I would say OSC people will really help you out with basics sa penetration testing. So yes po, OSCP for beginners.
Hey, may mga nagtatanong na, sir.
Okay, minimum salary aligns with cybersecurity jobs. Okay, for minimum salary, based sa mga nakausap ko din na friends in Manila. So if it's Manila, it should start at around 15 to no. Manila is at least 20,000. Pero if you would say na mababa siya, the reason why 20,000 starts kahit anong security job na mga entry level in Manila is because the company is going to invest a lot of money sa experience nyo. Okay? So, right after having the experience of 1 or 2 years and you transition into another security job, it will easily become exponential, no, yung salary. So, I know of people who are working. Ako, I would say na I'm working formally sa security industry for about 3-4 years, and yung salary is very very good. In Philippines, I would say if you have at least about 1 or 2 years in security, you can easily pull off at least 50 to 70,000, and it will jump up to 150,000, even 200 every month sa Philippines. And you'll actually imagine if a Philippine company can offer you about 100,000 pesos every month, even with about 2-3 years of experience. What more kung makaka-abroad ka, diba? So hopefully for security developers naman, application security developers, depending on your job title, I would say starting would be 25 to 35,000. Pero bawi po to sa sa benefits. Usually if you have a cybersecurity position, yung benefits is really nice. Like companies actually invest on your certifications. So if you would be able to um, start your career with an entry level security position, it's highly likely that yung company na join na nyo will be able to support your certifications. So salary wise, I would say don't worry about it in the first 2 years kasi it will become exponential once you get the experience.
Okay, next
Uh,
kay
next
Johnny.
question po is would like to ask where can we get OSCP site for us to review and practice?
Okay. So for this one po, this is a bit challenging to answer, no, because the resources, the topics that are being discussed sa OSCP is actually quite a lot. Pero I would say that the training materials that offensive security will be given is enough to pass the exam. What the students or professionals that are into OSCP maybe can do is practice more sa laboratory given by the provider, no, given by offensive security. So there's no question about the training materials. I think the best way to learn about offensive security or OSCP will be applying the topics in practice. Once you get familiar with how things work, it will be easier na, and you can definitely easily pass the exam. So for practice, I would say hack the box. If you're not doing the labs na, kung nag-expire na yung OSEP labs, hack the box and Von Hub. I'll type it in. Hack the box and Von Hub. Ayun.
Yan, bigay na si Sir Nato ng tips para kung interested kayo sa ano to, OCSP. Interested din ako, sir. Kaso, ng malaking time, medyo hindi
Oh,
kaya. When I yung ano to, yung fee for
mm, mm.
not is not really cheap. May expensive talaga.
Expensive siya, sir, and then ano din siya, very, very time consuming. You remember, yung kinuha ko dati is 90 days of lab. And within that 90 days, nagfe-freelance lang ako dati, like 2017. I was doing freelance, so I controlled my time. In one day, I was spending 5 to 6 hours sa lab and maybe about 4 to 6 hours of work. And na-fail pa ako nung first day ko.
Eh, hindi ganun kadali pag nasa offensive. Pero work, ano to, work kasi ang sometimes it sees na depende din sa'yo. Pero worth it kapag nakikita ko dun sa isang slide ni Sir Nato, it's yung more on pag nag-exploit ka or nag-check ka ng mga bugs of those big companies. The benefits is really tempting and then it's wild talaga for those who are interested. Okay? Any more questions before we actually close this session for cybersecurity?